I mean, the charges, for example, on that latter one, on boarding cards are absolutely ridiculous. The amount of money it actually costs to print off, but consumers need to be aware. They need to be savvy, and they need to make sure that they check all of these details.
I spoke to somebody at Luton Airport once. I travelled a long way to fly from Luton, so I asked them, "Why are you flying from Luton Airport? There's so many airports closer to you." I pressed the wrong button. That was the response. It wasn't the cheapest flight. He thought he was looking somewhere else. We ended up booking from Luton, and it would have cost him so much money to get it changed. He just thought he might as well drive to Luton and travel from there. So
we've actually come across people who've booked flights from the wrong airports here in the UK, and we've also come across consumers who've booked the wrong destination. Is it Birmingham, UK, or is it Birmingham, Alabama? That kind of thing. And but as you quite correctly point out, the actual cost of making some of these changes, particularly if you try to do it through an agent's ticket, even, because that can actually almost be impossible sometimes. But it can be very cost prohibitive, almost to the point where it's probably cheaper to go and buy a new ticket somewhere else.
You can keep up to date with travel news and leave me a message at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. It seems the whole world and his mother is driving past my open window at the moment, so I'm sorry if you hear the cars driving past. We're coming up to peak holiday season, school holidays, and the next question I put to Frank was whether he saw any problems coming up on the horizon. Last year we had a few companies going bust at unusual times, such as peak holiday. So I wanted to know what his feelings were, and obviously he couldn't name names, but I just wanted to get a rough idea about how he felt about the state of the industry.
I mean, this year has been marked by small and year, I should say, it has been marked by small and big failures, and I don't really see the potential for that changing at all. I think it's complicated, unfortunately, by the B word, which I'll try not to mention again, because travel is so reliant on currency exchanges and issues like the price of oil and so on and so forth. And these have profound effects on travel companies. So they, particularly the big players, they're able to perhaps hedge their bets against oil prices, and they make the contracts with hotels and resorts, 12 to 18 months, sometimes longer. So they're able to kind of spread the risk and the cost, but they are all affected to a greater or lesser degree. And I think it does depend, quite honestly, what's going to happen next in this country as to whether or not some kind of stability can be reintroduced. Or whether or not, we're going to go back to certainly the early 1970s, mid 1970s, when the currency market speculated on the pound with great glee. And I think we've forgotten how stable things have been for us, certainly since the 1990s, leaving aside the issues of austerity and bank failures, but generally speaking, currencies have been fairly stable, and that is what has probably given some stability to companies. But I do think that there is quite a potential there. I would imagine that some travel companies are trimming the costs that they pay to hoteliers and resorts, and you may find, some difficulties with hotel chains, and the ability to deliver, a quality product. And I think that's my primary concern, because of the tightness of money. But I have to say, I do expect to see more low-cost holiday-type situations regressively. Whether that's in this next 12 months or in the next couple of years, only time will tell.
Always cheerful as usual. That's what I like.
I do my best, John.
When we last spoke, you mentioned about how you're looking at the quality of air in aircraft cabins. And since we spoke, there's been a couple of reports released by Europe, and they said everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about. Does that mean that's the end of investigating the quality of cabin air?
Oh goodness, no. Yes, I've read the two reports in question because I was in Brussels at the time looking at this particular issue, and the one report was about measurements of chemicals in cabins, and essentially the chaps who drafted this report came up with a new phrase to basically say that there isn't a problem, and the new phrase is thinning effect, and that's all about how air is exchanged in an aircraft cabin. And basically, because it's changed every couple of minutes, or 50% of it is, then there is a dilution, if you like, or as they call it, a thinning effect. And so therefore, that keeps the potential, I think they've missed the point actually, it keeps the potential for high volumes of chemicals in the aircraft cabin down to a very low level. But of course, there's the key word, low level. Low level exposure is a huge issue. And I have to say this particular report on measurements has not gone down well in a number of quarters. And then the other report is about looking at the toxicity, if you like, within the human body as a result of any potential exposure. And it talks about chemical characterizations and toxic effects and so on and so forth. But it goes into detail about human sensitivity and the genetic differences that exist in all of us, because we will react differently to any exposure of chemical, whether it's the diesel fumes in the street outside or whether it's inside an aircraft cabin. And what was interesting was that they kind of dismissed the potential effect on human health. But they were concerned about the potential for low-level exposure with affecting the neural functions, and so therefore they, despite the fact that they kind of, well, actually there isn't a real problem with human health, they actually said, well, you know what, we need to look at the low-level exposure, and but we think that the mixture technology needs investigating. So effectively what they're doing is they're saying exactly what we as campaigners have always been saying, which is low level is important. You need to look at the mixture of chemicals because as they break down through the high temperatures that they are heated up to, they join up with each other and create new chemicals. And so therefore, you know, we need to understand what is going on in that environment. And these two reports are the precursor to a study. This study is costing 1.3 million euro, funded by the European Union, to look into this. So these reports are the basis, and the criticism is that these reports are effectively the draft of the final report of the big study. I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. I think that there is now so much pressure from trade unions and from consumers and people like me and the like, that the European Union, I think, is actually listening very carefully to the issues. There is a very powerful aviation lobby on this particular issue, but I don't think that there is a hiding place anymore about this. I think, you know, whatever happens to us here in the UK, we are going to be affected by the decisions about the creation of standards, about the creation of law, which will hopefully clean up the aircraft environment for us all.
You can keep up to date with travel news and leave me a message at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Coming up to the end of my conversation with Frank from Holiday Travel Watch. He is worth following on Twitter, so I will be putting his Twitter name on facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. I should breathe more. But it's not just airplanes where you should worry about fumes, it's also cruise ships. Frank's going to tell us more.
You can go on a cruise, for example, and you can be exposed to fumes because in the older cruise ships in particular, they use old jet turbine engines, aircraft engines, and they re-jig them for use on board a ship, and they convert them to use diesel or whatever it is they use on ships. And the problem is we've dealt with consumers who've been exposed to the fumes from diesel. And it's, diesel is just the generic term. Diesel is a concoction of chemicals that makes a particular engine work, a bit exactly like jet fuel. Of course, as we know, diesel has been listed by the World Health Organization as a major carcinogen. And it's also listed within the REACH regulations as well, the REACH information. We are talking about our environment. We're talking about our safety. If your crew becomes incapacitated, whether it's on a ship or on an aircraft, and that has serious consequences for you as a consumer. It could have serious consequences for you in health. But, I've also dealt with some hotels who, as part of them trying to save water, shall we say, in hotels, they take all the sewage and the chemicals that go with the sewage and they water the gardens of their hotel complex with that liquid. And they spray that water into flower pots and tubs and what have you, very close to people's rooms. And, people suffer the ill health effects of that. So, these are very important issues. I mean, yes, it's not cheerful. The majority of holidays at Stress are happy experiences. But, as travel consumers, we should be aware of these particular problems and also be aware of how to report them and what you must do in the event that you are exposed to any of these particular problems. You won't find information of these items on travel trade body websites or indeed on in the back of brochures or anything like that. This information comes directly from consumer experiences, and it's important that the great British public, your listeners out there, know what the potential for various problems are in the products that they buy and travel.
We've reached the end of this week's show, which is good news for me because now I can switch the aircon back on. But the contact details for all my guests will be found at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. That's also the Facebook page where you can contact me for things you'd like to see covered on the show. But you have to be quick because next week is my last one. I end of my shows after 5 years. But I will still be posting the odd bits of news on that Facebook page, so do follow it. And I do hope you can join me next time on the last John Guinn Travel Show on ukhealthradio.com, where for the last time I'll be checking out before you check in.